The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of the Galactic Council's command center. Red lights flashed as technicians rushed between control panels, their faces pale with fear. Admiral Thex-9, a tall blue-skinned Zentari with 4 arms, stood frozen at the main viewing screen. The image displayed there made his stomach turn cold. Valari Prime was burning. The peaceful green world that had been home to billions now looked like a diseased eye in space. Dark smoke covered entire continents. Massive ships shaped like metal spiders crawled across the surface, their legs digging deep into the earth like parasites. The Krex horde had arrived. "Sir, incoming transmission from the surface," called Lieutenant Vex, his 6-fingered hands shaking as he worked the controls. "Put it through," Thex-9 ordered, though he dreaded what he would hear. The screen flickered. A Valari female appeared. Her normally silver skin burned and blackened. Behind her, buildings crumbled as dark shapes moved through the smoke. Her large eyes, usually bright with intelligence, were filled with terror. "Galactic Council, this is Governor Lyra of Valari Prime," she gasped, struggling to speak through the noise of destruction. "The Krex, they came from nowhere. Our defenses have been gone in minutes. They're harvesting our people, taking children. Please, anyone who can hear this." An explosion rocked the building behind her. The transmission cut to static. The command center fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant wail of alarms. Officers from a dozen different species stared at the screen in shock. The Valari were known across the galaxy for their kindness. They healed the sick, fed the hungry, and never fought wars. To attack them was like destroying a hospital. "How long until our fleets arrive?" Admiral Thex-9 asked, his voice tight. Commander Rax, a bear-like creature from the ice world of Thulon, looked up from his console. His expression said everything. "The 3rd Fleet, destroyed. The 7th Fleet is no contact for 6 hours. Admiral Yorick's ship sent one message. They adapt too fast. Cannot stop them." Thex-9 felt his heart sink. The Galactic Council's military was the strongest force in known space. Ships that could crack moons, weapons that could boil oceans, and the Krex had swept through them like they were nothing. "Sir," Vex called again. Another transmission coming through. This time it was Admiral Corvin of the 4th Fleet. His ship's bridge was filled with smoke and sparks flew from damaged consoles. "Council Command, the Krex are not like anything we've faced. Their ships change. When we hit them with energy weapons, they grow armor. When we use kinetics, they develop shields. It's like they're learning in real time. What are our options?" Thex-9 demanded. Corvin's image flickered as his ship shook under enemy fire. "We're down to 30% fleet strength. At this rate, we'll be gone in 4 hours. The Valari will be extinct by tomorrow." The transmission cut out. Thex-9 stared at the dead screen, feeling the weight of an entire species' survival on his shoulders. Around him, officers whispered in their native languages. Some prayed. Others calculated how long until the Krex reached their own homeworlds. "There is one option," came a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Dr. Kell, the Council's chief xenobiologist. The small gray-skinned scientist looked nervous as all eyes fell on him. "Speak," Thex-9 ordered. Kell stepped forward, clutching a data pad against his chest. "The Deathworld humans, those from Sol 3 called Earth." A wave of mutters swept through the room. Some officers looked disgusted, others afraid. "You can't be serious," Commander Rax growled. "Those creatures are barely contained on their own world. Their planet has gravity that would crush most of us, radiation levels that would kill us in minutes, and the species that live there." He shuddered. "That's exactly the point." Kell continued, his voice growing stronger. "The Krex adapt to normal warfare. But humans, they're not normal. They evolved on a world that tries to kill everything that lives on it. They breathe poison. They drink liquids that would melt our stomachs. They've been fighting each other for thousands of years." "Fighting each other?" Lieutenant Vex asked, confused. "For sport sometimes," Kell said grimly. "They have entire industries built around conflict. Their entertainment includes watching creatures battle to the death. And their military. He paused, checking his datapad. Our last intelligence report says they turned their nuclear weapons into recreational devices. They have festivals where they detonate explosives for fun. Admiral Thex 9 felt a chill run down his spine. What makes you think they would help? Because, despite everything else, they seem to have a strange sense of justice, Kell replied. Our anthropologists studying their transmissions found something interesting. When their own kind are threatened, they stop fighting each other instantly. They become one unit, and they never ever give up. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew about the humans, but few had ever suggested actually contacting them. They were the monsters parents used to scare children. The species that thrived in conditions that would kill anything else. Sir, Vex called out urgently. Long range. Sensors are detecting Krek's movement. They're heading towards the Centauri colonies. Thex 9 closed his eyes. The Centauri colonies housed 2 billion souls, peaceful traders and artists who had never known war. If the Kreks reached them. He opened his eyes and looked around the room at his officers, at the beings who had sworn to protect the galaxy, at the desperate faces of those who had already lost so much. Prepare a message probe, he said finally. Maximum encryption. Set course for Sol system. Sir? Rax asked in disbelief. Dr. Kell is right, we're out of options. Thex 9 straightened his uniform and walked to the communication console. If the Kreks want to see what real monsters look like, then perhaps it's time they met humanity. As he began recording the message that would change the galaxy forever. Thex 9 wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. But as another report came in of Krek ships advancing toward more peaceful worlds, he knew there was no choice left. The Deathworlders were their only hope. The message probe launched 20 minutes later, rocketing toward Earth at maximum speed. Inside its memory banks was a desperate plea for help from a galaxy under siege. None of them knew that this message would awaken something far more dangerous than the Kreks had ever imagined. The humans were about to go to war. The Earth Defense Station hung in orbit like a massive metal ring around the blue-green planet below. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck, watching supply ships dock with the station. At 35, she was young for her rank, but her dark eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen too much war. Captain, called her communications officer, Lieutenant Jackson. We've got an incoming ship on long-range sensors. Unknown design. It's weird. Sarah turned from the window. Define weird, Lieutenant. It looks like someone took a jellyfish and covered it in metal plates, and it's broadcasting on frequencies we've never seen before. Sarah raised an eyebrow. In her 15 years of military service, she had seen many strange ships. Pirates used old cargo vessels. Terrorists built crude rockets, but this was something else entirely. Any weapons? She asked. Negative. In fact, sir, it's barely holding together. Life support is failing. Whoever's inside won't last much longer. Sarah made her decision quickly. Clear docking bay 7. Send medical teams, and tell them to bring environmental suits for unknown atmospheric conditions. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the docking bay as the alien ship settled onto the landing platform. It looked even stranger up close. The hull seemed to shift and change color like living skin. Strange symbols glowed along its sides in patterns that hurt to look at. Captain, Dr. Martinez called from behind his scanner. The being inside is alive, but its biology is completely unknown. I've never seen anything like it. The ship's ramp lowered with a hiss of escaping gases. The air that came out shimmered strangely, and several maintenance workers stepped back coughing. Then a figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Sarah had to work hard not to stare. The creature was about 7 feet tall and thin like a stick insect. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly. It had 4 arms and a head that was too large for its body. Most striking were its eyes. Huge, dark things that seemed to hold ancient sadness. The alien stumbled down the ramp and collapsed, to its knees. It spoke in a voice like wind chimes, but somehow Sarah understood the words. Please, it said. My name is Ambassador Zill of the Galactic Council. I bring a message of desperate need. Dr. Martinez immediately rushed forward with his medical team. but the alien waved them away with one of its 4 hands. I am dying, yes, but my mission is more important than my life, Zil said. Captain Chen, I have studied your files. You are a military leader. You understand war. Sarah knelt down beside the alien. How do you know my name? How do you know our language? We have watched your species for a long time, Zil admitted. From a distance. Your world is difficult for us. The gravity would crush our bones. The radiation would burn our skin. But we have learned your languages through your broadcasts. Why? Come here now? Sarah asked. Zil's large eyes grew even sadder. Because something terrible hunts the galaxy. Something that destroys entire species for pleasure. We call them the Krex Horde. They have already killed billions. The peaceful Valari are under attack right now. Our greatest fleets have fallen. The alien reached into its robes and pulled out a small device. It projected a hologram into the air. Sarah watched in horror as she saw peaceful cities burning, strange spider-like ships harvesting people like crops. The Krex adapt to everything. We throw at them, Zil continued. Energy weapons make them grow armor. Physical attacks make them develop shields. They learn and change faster than we can fight them. Sarah studied the images. Her military mind was already analyzing the enemy, tactics looking for weaknesses. What do you want from us? Help, Zil said simply. You are Deathworlders. You live on a planet that would kill most galactic species in minutes. You have survived by being stronger, faster, more adaptable than anything else. We need that strength now. Sarah stood up, her mind racing. Earth had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now she knew they weren't, and the universe was in trouble. Lieutenant Jackson, she called, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command, Priority Alpha. As Jackson worked at his console, Sarah looked back at Zil. Tell me about these Krex. Everything you know. For the next hour, Zil shared intelligence about the enemy. The Krex were nomads who traveled from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything in their path. They had technology that could adapt in real time to any attack. Their ships were alive, growing and changing as needed. Worst of all, they seemed to enjoy the terror they caused. The Galactic Council has 47 member species, Zil explained. Our combined military has 5 million ships. The Krex destroyed half of them in 2 weeks. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. That kind of military power was beyond anything Earth had imagined. But something in the alien story bothered her. You said they adapt to conventional weapons, she said slowly. What about unconventional ones? I do not understand, Zil replied. Sarah smiled grimly. Have you ever tried ramming them with asteroids? Setting off volcanoes on their landing sites? Using biological weapons? Psychological warfare? Zil stared at her with those huge, dark eyes. These are not civilized methods of war. No, Sarah agreed. They're human methods. At that moment, Lieutenant Jackson called out, Captain, I have Admiral Mitchell on the line. He wants to speak with you immediately. Sarah walked to the communication console. Admiral Mitchell's weathered face appeared on the screen. Behind him, she could see the chaos of Earth's military command center. Captain Chen, the Admiral said, we've been monitoring your guest. Is this for real? As far as I can tell, sir, the alien story matches the energy signatures we detected from space. Something big is happening out there. Mitchell nodded grimly. I've been in contact with the World Defense Council. Every major nation wants in on this. But we need more information before we commit to anything. Sarah looked back at Zil, who was listening carefully despite not understanding English. Sir, this creature traveled who knows how far in a dying ship just to ask for our help. I think the situation is exactly as bad as it claims. Captain, Mitchell said, if we do this, it changes everything. Humanity joins the galactic community permanently. No going back. Sarah thought about the images Zil had shown her. Billions of innocent beings dying while cosmic predators fed on their terror. She thought about Earth's long history of war, and how humanity had always fought hardest when protecting others. With respect, sir, she said, I think we passed the point of no return the moment this ship arrived. The question is, do we help or do we wait for these creks to come for us next? Admiral Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. Stand by, Captain. We'll have an answer within the hour. As the transmission ended, Sarah turned back to Zill. The alien was struggling to stay conscious, but its eyes held a spark of hope. Rest easy, Ambassador, Sarah said gently. Humanity has never walked away from a fight, and we've never let bullies win if we could help it. For the first time since arriving, Zill smiled. Perhaps, it whispered, the Deathworlders are exactly what the galaxy needs. The phone call that changed everything came at 3 a.m. local time in every capital city on Earth. President Martinez of the Americas Federation was the first to answer. Within minutes, Prime Minister Chen of the Asian Alliance, Chancellor Muller of the European Union, and President Okafor of the African states were all on the secure line. For the first time in decades, the leaders of Earth's major powers spoke with one voice. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Mitchell began from the Pentagon. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. We've made contact with aliens. They're asking for our help to stop something called the Krex Horde from destroying peaceful civilizations. The silence on the line lasted exactly 10 seconds. How do we know this is real? Chancellor Muller asked. Because their ship is sitting in our orbital station right now, Admiral Mitchell replied. And because our deep space sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving toward our galaxy. Something big is coming, President Okafor spoke. Next. What exactly are they asking us to do? Fight a war that's already destroyed half the galactic military, Mitchell said bluntly. The alien ambassador says we're Deathworlders, species that evolved on planets too dangerous for most galactic life. They think that makes us uniquely qualified to stop these Kreks. Prime Minister Chen's voice carried a note of steel. How many ships do they need? Everyone we can spare. And some we probably can't. What happened next surprised everyone in the room. Instead of arguments about national interests or territorial disputes, the world leaders began planning the largest military operation in human history. The Pacific. Fleet can be ready in 6 hours, Admiral Yamamoto reported from Tokyo. The Mediterranean battle group is already moving to Assembly Point Alpha, Admiral Silva added from Rome. Our orbital construction yards can have the new carriers ready in 48 hours, President Martinez confirmed. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as the response unfolded across Earth. Ships that had been pointing at each other intense standoffs just hours ago now formed up into joint task forces. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. I have never seen anything like this, Ambassador Zill whispered from his medical bed. The alien had recovered enough to stand, though Dr. Martinez insisted he stay connected to life support. In the Galactic Council, it takes months of debate to move a single fleet. You mobilized an entire world in hours. When someone asks for help, we help, Sarah replied simply. It's what humans do. On the main screen, the fleet assembly showed numbers that grew by the hour. The USS Enterprise, the newest of Earth's city-sized carriers, led a formation of 60 ships. The INSS Gandhi brought antimatter torpedo cruisers from the Indian Ocean Fleet. The HMS Churchill carried the Royal Space Marines, known throughout Earth's colonies as the fiercest fighters in human space. Captain Chen, Lieutenant Jackson called, from his station. Admiral Mitchell is requesting your presence in Conference Room A. They're planning the mission. Sarah made her way through the station's corridors, passing windows that showed the growing fleet outside. Ships that had never worked together were now practicing formation flying. Fighter squadrons that spoke different languages were coordinating attack patterns. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. The conference room held representatives from every major Earth power. Admiral Mitchell stood at the head of the table, pointing at a star map showing the route to Valari space. We'll have approximately 400 ships ready for departure, he announced. Mixed battle groups with full support vessels. Our best estimate puts us at Valari Prime in 6 days. What about supplies? Asked General Park from the Korean Space Command. Every nation is contributing what they can, Admiral Silva replied. The Europeans are providing medical ships. The Africans are sending their best engineers. The Americans and Russians are contributing heavy firepower. Sarah studied the fleet composition on the screen. It was impressive, but she had to ask the hard question. Sir, how do we fight an enemy that can adapt to any weapon? Admiral Mitchell smiled grimly. That's where you come in, Captain. You'll be commanding the advanced scout group. Your job is to study the Kreks in action and find their weaknesses. And if they adapt to us too, then we adapt back, faster and harder than they expect. Ambassador Zill spoke up from the back of the room. Admiral, I must warn you, the Kreks have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Their ships are living things that grow and change. They show no mercy. Admiral Mitchell turned to face the alien. Ambassador, you said we're Deathworlders. You said we live on a planet that would kill most species. What you don't understand is that survival on Earth requires one thing above all else. What is that? The ability to be more adaptable than anything trying to eat you. The room erupted in activity as final plans were made. Supply ships would follow the main fleet. Communication networks would link every ship. Most importantly, Earth's best scientists would study every piece of data they could gather about the Kreks. Dr. Williams from MIT raised her hand. Admiral, we've been analyzing the data Ambassador Zill provided. The Krek ships seem to be biological, in nature. That gives us several options they might not expect, such as diseases, parasites, things their adaptive technology might not recognize as weapons until it's too late. The alien ambassador looked shocked. You would use biological warfare? If it saves innocent lives, yes, Sarah said firmly. Earth has faced plagues, predators, and disasters that make your worst nightmares look like children's stories. We've learned from all of them. As the meeting continued, Sarah noticed something remarkable happening. Officers who had been trained to fight each other their entire careers were now working together seamlessly. Old rivalries were forgotten. National secrets were shared freely. The threat to an alien species had done something that decades of diplomacy couldn't. It had united humanity. Fleet status report, Admiral Mitchell called out. All battle groups are in position, came the reply. 90% of ships report ready for departure. Sarah felt a surge of pride as she looked at the assembled fleet. Each ship bore the colors of its home nation, but above them all flew a new flag, a blue circle representing Earth, surrounded by stars. Ambassador Zill, Admiral Mitchell said formally. Would you like to address the fleet before departure? The alien nodded weakly and moved to the communication console. When he spoke, his voice carried across every ship in the fleet. Warriors of Earth, he began. I came to your world expecting to find monsters. Instead, I found something far more dangerous to those who would harm the innocent. I found heroes. The response from the fleet was instantaneous. Ship after ship acknowledged the message. The diversity of human languages and accents created a chorus that filled the communication channels. All ships, this is Admiral Mitchell, the fleet commander announced. Our mission is simple. The Kreks horde has declared war on every peaceful species in the galaxy. They've never faced humans before. Let's make sure they regret that oversight. The fleet prepared for departure. Sarah returned to the observation deck. The sight before her was magnificent. Hundreds of ships from every corner of the Earth, united for the first time in human history. Impressive, Ambassador Zill commented, joining her at the window. This is just the beginning, Sarah replied. Wait until you see what we can do when someone threatens our friends. The fleet formation was complete. 400 ships carrying the hopes of two worlds prepared to jump to hyperspace. In 6 days they would reach Valari space. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone asked Deathworlders for help. The countdown began. Fleet jump in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Space twisted, and Earth's fleet vanished into hyperspace, racing toward their first glimpse of galactic war. 6 days later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valari system. What they saw made even the most experienced veterans pause in shock. Valari Prime, once a beautiful green world, now looked like a diseased fruit. Black, scars covered entire continents. Massive Krek ships shaped like metallic spiders crawled across the surface while smaller vessels swarmed in orbit like angry insects. My God, Lieutenant Jackson whispered from his station aboard the USS Enterprise. There must be 1,000 of them. Captain Sarah Chen studied the tactical display. The Krex fleet was enormous, but something about their formation seemed wrong. They were spread out, lazy, like predators who had already won. "They're not expecting us," she reported to Admiral Mitchell. "The Krex ships are in harvesting formation, not battle formation." "Good," the Admiral replied over the comm. "That gives us our first advantage. Fleet-wide scan, I want to know everything about these ships." As Earth sensors swept across the Krex fleet, the data they collected was disturbing. The enemy ships weren't just mechanical. They were alive. Their hulls pulsed like heartbeats. Strange tendrils extended from larger vessels to smaller ones, sharing resources and information. "Captain," Dr. Williams called from the science station, "these readings are incredible. The Krex ships are biological organisms, probably grown rather than built. But that's not the strangest part." "What else?" Sarah asked. "They're all connected, like a hive mind. Information travels between ships instantly through those organic conduits." Sarah nodded grimly. That explained how they adapted so quickly to conventional attacks, but it also suggested a weakness. "Admiral," she called over the fleet channel, "I'm seeing patterns that might help us. Requesting permission to take my scout group in for a closer look." "Negative, Captain. We stick to the plan. All ships attack Formation Alpha." The human fleet moved with precision that surprised even Ambassador Zill, who watched from the Enterprise's bridge. Ships that had been enemies months ago now moved like parts of a single organism. The Krex, apparently confident in their superiority, didn't react until the human missiles were already in flight. Then everything changed. The Krex ships suddenly came alive, spinning and reshaping themselves. The first wave of human missiles struck what appeared to be soft organic hulls, but the explosion seemed to do no damage. Instead, the impact sites grew thick armor plates within seconds. "They're adapting to kinetic weapons," the weapons officer reported. Switching to energy weapons, laser batteries and particle beams lanced out from the human ships. The Krex vessels responded by growing mirror-like surfaces that reflected the attacks harmlessly into space. "All conventional weapons are ineffective," Admiral Mitchell announced grimly. "They're learning from every attack." That's when the largest Krex ship, a monster the size of a small moon, turned toward the human fleet. It opened like a flower, revealing a weapon that made the air itself glow with deadly energy. "Planet Cracker charging," sensors reported. The weapon that destroyed the Galactic Council fleets. The massive beam lanced out, washing over the lead human ships. The crews braced for death, but it didn't come. The ships shook violently. Their hulls glowed red-hot, but they didn't break apart. "Report!" Admiral Mitchell demanded. "Minimal damage to hull integrity," came the confused reply from the USS Churchill. "The Planet Cracker seems designed to disable life support systems by making worlds uninhabitable. But our ships are already built to operate in space. Total vacuum, cosmic, radiation, extreme temperatures." Captain Chen felt a grim smile cross her face. "Admiral, they built their ultimate weapon to destroy normal life. But we're not normal life." "Captain Chen, you're cleared for close reconnaissance. Show them what Deathworlders can do." Sarah's scout group, 12 fast ships built for speed and stealth, broke formation and raced toward the Krex fleet. As they closed distance, the enemy ships detected them and began to change, growing new weapons and defenses. But Sarah had studied the sensor data carefully. She had noticed something the aliens had missed. All ships target the organic conduits connecting their vessels. Not with weapons, with boarding parties. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Jackson asked in confusion. "The Krex adapt to external attacks," Sarah explained, as their ship dodged enemy fire. "But they've never faced something that adapts from the inside." Within minutes, human drop pods launched from the scout ships. Unlike the Galactic Council's forces, humans had trained for centuries to fight in hostile environments. Their armor could handle vacuum, radiation, extreme cold, and crushing pressure. The first human Marines to land on a Krex ship immediately faced the vessel's immune response, antibodies the size of fighters that tried to destroy the intruders. But the Marines adapted quickly, using their knowledge of Earth's most dangerous environments. Sergeant Martinez from the Earth Corps had grown up diving in the toxic sulfur lakes of Venus mining stations. The acidic atmosphere inside the Krek ship barely slowed him down. Corporal Kim from the Antarctic Defense Force found the sub-zero internal temperature comfortable compared to the ice caves where she'd trained. Most importantly, the humans brought something the Kreks couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Biological weapons refined from Earth's deadliest organisms. Viruses that had evolved to survive in boiling volcanic vents. Bacteria that thrived in radioactive waste. Parasites that could eat through almost any material. "This is incredible," Dr. Williams watched as the infected Krek's ships began to malfunction. "They're trying to adapt to our biological weapons, but each adaptation takes energy and time. And we brought dozens of different organisms." The tide of battle shifted as more human ships closed in. The Kreks, for the first time in their history, began to retreat. Their adaptive technology couldn't keep up with humans who brought the evolutionary lessons of an entire planet to war. "Fleet Command," Sarah reported as her Marines returned with samples of Krek's biology. "The enemy is withdrawing to the outer system. We've established a foothold, but they're regrouping." "Excellent work, Captain. Phase 2 begins now." As if summoned by magic, new ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the human fleet. Not warships, but massive vessels that looked like floating factories. They immediately began launching thousands of small pods toward Villari Prime. "What are those?" Ambassador Zill asked in wonder. Sarah smiled. "Medical ships, search and rescue teams, engineers. You see, Ambassador, humans don't just know how to fight. We also know how to rebuild." The pods landed on Villari Prime and disgorged teams of human specialists. Each team was equipped to work in the toxic, irradiated landscape the Kreks had created. To them, it was just another hostile environment, the kind they'd been training in their whole lives. "The Villari survivors are being evacuated to clean zones," Admiral Mitchell reported. "Medical teams report they can neutralize most of the Krek's biological weapons." Ambassador Zill watched in amazement as humans worked in conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly. "You fight like demons," he said slowly, "but you heal like angels." "Two sides of the same coin," Sarah replied. "We learned both skills surviving on Earth. In the outer system, the Krek's fleet had stopped retreating. The massive spider ships were clustering together, their organic conduits intertwining like a nervous system. They were adapting again, but this time on a scale no one had seen before. "Captain," sensors reported, "the Krek's fleet is merging. They're becoming something bigger." Sarah watched the tactical display as hundreds of enemy ships fused into a single massive organism. It was the size of a small planet and growing larger. "Admiral," she called, "I think we made them angry." "Good," Admiral Mitchell replied. "Let's see how they handle Phase 3. As the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of battle, the message was clear. The Kreks had never faced an enemy that got stronger the harder things became. They were about to learn what happened when Deathworlders decided someone needed protection. The real war was just beginning. The fused Krek's mega-organism pulsed in the darkness of space like an angry heart. It had grown to the size of Earth's moon, its surface covered in millions of weapon ports and organic sensors. At its center, a massive eye opened, scanning the human fleet with ancient malevolence. "My God," Lieutenant Jackson whispered. "It's looking at us." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise, watching as the massive creature shifted its attention from the dying world of Villari Prime to the human fleet. The readings were unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Analysis, Dr. Williams?" Sarah asked. "It's not just a ship anymore, Captain. It's become a single living weapon. Every Krek's vessel that merged with it has added to its capabilities. It has the combined firepower of 1,000 ships, but with the intelligence of a unified organism." Admiral Mitchell's voice crackled over the comm system. "All ships maintain distance. That thing is scanning us, trying to learn our weaknesses." Sarah studied the tactical display. The Krek's mega-organism wasn't just sitting there. It was slowly rotating, testing different weapon configurations against imaginary targets. It was preparing. "Admiral," Sarah called, "I think it's analyzing our previous attacks. Every weapon we used, every tactic we employed. It's getting ready to counter everything at once. Then we'd better try something it hasn't seen before. That's when Admiral Webb's reinforcement fleet arrived. The space behind the human formation rippled, and suddenly 300 more ships appeared. But these weren't the sleek warships that had fought in the first battle. These vessels looked crude, thrown together from salvage parts and mining equipment. "This is Admiral Webb aboard the INSS Defiance," came a gruff voice over the comm. "Sorry we're late. Had to make a few stops on the way here." Sarah looked at the new arrivals with confusion. Many of the ships were converted cargo vessels, mining platforms, even luxury cruise ships that had been hastily armed. It looked more like a refugee convoy than a military fleet. "Admiral Webb," Admiral Mitchell replied. "What exactly did you bring us?" "Everything that could fly and carry a weapon," Webb answered cheerfully. "But more importantly, I brought everything from the asteroid belt." The tactical display updated to show hundreds of massive rocks trailing behind Webb's fleet. But as Sarah looked closer, she realized they weren't just rocks. "Those are guided asteroids," Dr. Williams reported in amazement. "They've been fitted with engines and guidance systems." Admiral Webb's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Remember, the Kreks adapt to weapons, but they've never faced a solar system that thinks like a weapon." The Krek's mega-organism seemed to sense the new threat. It began to pulse faster. Weapon. Ports opening all across its surface. The massive eye at its center focused on the approaching asteroids. "It's charging weapons," sensors reported. Multiple planet cracker beams powering up. "All ships, scatter formation Delta," Admiral Mitchell ordered. "Let's see how they handle this." What happened next was unlike any battle in galactic history. Instead of ship-to-ship combat, it became a contest between two completely different ways of thinking about war. The Kreks fired everything they had: energy beams that could boil oceans, kinetic hammers that could crack moons, biological weapons that could convert entire planets. But the humans didn't fight like a normal fleet. Admiral Webb's converted cargo ships used their massive size to shield the warships. Mining vessels deployed clouds of metal debris that confused Krek sensors. The guided asteroids split apart, revealing smaller rocks that had been hollowed out and filled with surprises. Asteroid 77 just released a swarm of maintenance drones, Tactical reported. "They're heading for the Krek's organism." "Those aren't maintenance drones," Sarah realized suddenly. "They're carrying something." The drones were actually modified deep space repair robots, built to fix equipment in the harshest environments imaginable. When they reached the Krek's mega-organism, they didn't attack its weapons or armor. Instead, they began to repair things. But they were repairing the organism wrong on purpose. "Brilliant," Dr. Williams breathed. "They're introducing incompatible technologies into the Krek's biological systems. The organism's trying to integrate human repair codes into its own structure." The Krek's mega-organism began to shudder. Its perfect coordination started to break down as human technology spread through its systems like a virus. Parts of its surface began to work against each other. "Now," Admiral Mitchell commanded. The human fleet moved as one, but not in a conventional attack pattern. They surrounded the massive organism and began to do something that confused even Ambassador Zill. They started building around it. Construction ships that had hidden among Webb's convoy suddenly revealed themselves. They began assembling a massive cage around the Krek's mega-organism, using materials they'd brought from the asteroid belt. "What are you doing?" the alien ambassador asked in bewilderment. Sarah smiled grimly. "Something humans learned from dealing with Earth's most dangerous predators. Sometimes the best way to stop a monster isn't to kill it, it's to contain it." The cage wasn't just a prison. As it took shape, Dr. Williams explained its true purpose. "We're creating an isolation field. The organism has grown too large to adapt quickly. If we can cut off its ability to change and learn, it becomes just another large target." The Krek's mega-organism realized what was happening and thrashed violently, but the cage was made from materials that had survived billions of years in the vacuum of space. It held. "Admiral," Sarah reported, "the organism is sealed. Its adaptive capabilities are dropping rapidly." "Excellent. Now for the final touch. The last group of ships in Webb's fleet finally revealed themselves. They were science vessels, but they carried something unexpected. Massive terraforming equipment. "We're not going to destroy it," Admiral Webb announced. "We're going to change the environment around it. Make it too hostile for the organism to survive." They began pumping the space around the caged Krex mega-organism, full of compounds that were toxic to organic technology, but harmless to mechanical systems. The organism tried to adapt, but with its ability to change limited by the cage, it began to weaken. "Fascinating," Dr. Williams observed. The Krex's greatest strength was their ability to adapt to any attack. But humans learned long ago that the best way to defeat adaptation is to change the rules of the game entirely. The battle was over, not with a great explosion, but with the slow weakening of a trapped predator. The Krex mega-organism, for the first time in its species' history, found itself completely helpless. "All Krex ships in the system are powering down," sensors reported. "It appears the mega-organism was controlling them all. Without it, they're just floating." Admiral Mitchell addressed the entire human fleet. "Outstanding work, everyone. The immediate threat is neutralized. Rescue operations for Volari survivors will continue." "And Admiral Webb?" "Yes, sir. Next time, warn us before you arrive with half the solar system in tow." Sarah looked out at the trapped Krex mega-organism. It was still alive but contained, its power broken. Around them, Volari Prime was already beginning to heal as human terraforming teams worked to undo the damage. "Captain," Lieutenant Jackson called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Krex organism itself." The main screen flickered to life. The image that appeared was unlike anything they'd seen, a mixture of the spider-like Krex form and something else, something that might have been almost human. "Deathworlders," it spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "You have done something impossible. You have stopped the Horde." Sarah stepped forward. "What happens now?" "Now, we learn. Your species fights unlike any we have encountered. You do not seek to dominate or consume. You seek to protect. This is interesting." The transmission ended, leaving the humans to contemplate what they'd just accomplished. They hadn't just won a battle, they'd shown the galaxy's greatest predator a completely different way of thinking about war. Ambassador Zill approached Captain Chen with tears in his large eyes. "How do we thank you for this?" Sarah looked at the stars where human ships were already spreading out to search for other species that might need help. "You don't thank us, Ambassador. You join us. The galaxy's a dangerous place. Everyone needs friends." The age of the Krex had ended. The age of the Deathworld Alliance was about to begin. 3 months after the battle, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy. Delegates from 47 species filled the ancient hall, but all eyes were on the empty podium at the center. For the first time in galactic history, humans had been invited to address the council. Ambassador Zill stood at his designated spot, looking healthier than he had in months. The medical treatment he'd received on Earth had not only saved his life, but shown him something remarkable. Humans who could work in toxic environments that would kill most species were surprisingly gentle when helping those in need. "Honored delegates," Zill began, his voice carrying across the hall. 3 months ago, I traveled to a world we had classified as too dangerous for contact. I went there because our greatest fleets had fallen and billions faced extinction." The hall was silent. Everyone knew the story, but hearing it again sent chills through the assembled aliens. Today, the Volari children play in gardens that grow where Krex harvesting factories once stood. Today, the Centauri colonies sleep peacefully, knowing the threat has passed. And today, we have the honor of welcoming the species that made this possible. The great doors of the chamber opened. Captain Sarah Chen entered, flanked by representatives from every major Earth nation. Unlike the elaborate robes of the alien delegates, the humans wore simple military uniforms. They walked with the confidence of people who had seen impossible things and made them possible. Sarah approached the podium while the other humans took seats in what had been hastily designated as Earth's section. As she looked out at the gathered species, she felt the weight of the moment. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. "Honorable delegates," Sarah began, her voice clear and strong. "3 months ago, most of you had never heard of humans. You knew us only as Deathworlders, creatures from a planet too hostile to visit. Today I stand here not as a representative of one world, but as a friend to many worlds." She gestured to a screen that lit up behind her, showing images of the reconstruction efforts on Valari Prime. Human engineers worked alongside Valari civilians, rebuilding cities with new technologies that combined the best of both species. The Krex Horde called themselves the ultimate predators. They believed that strength meant the ability to destroy and consume, but they learned something important in our last battle. True strength is the ability to protect and build. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many species had tried for generations to find common ground. Humans had been in galactic space for 3 months and had already formed working partnerships with dozens of civilizations. Admiral Mitchell, representing Earth's military forces, stood to address a specific concern. "Some of you wonder if humans are simply another threat, a new predator in galactic space. I understand that fear. But let me tell you what we learned about ourselves in this war." He paused, looking directly at the delegates who had seemed most nervous about human presence. "We learned that our greatest weapons weren't our ships or our technology. Our greatest weapon was our willingness to stand between danger and innocent life. Every nation on Earth contributed to this fleet. We didn't fight the Krex because they threatened us directly. We fought them because they threatened people who couldn't defend themselves." Dr. Williams, representing Earth's scientific community, added, "The knowledge we've gained from working with your species has already led to breakthroughs that benefit everyone. Valari healing techniques combined with human resilience training are helping patients across the galaxy. Zentari energy. Technology integrated with human engineering is making faster, more efficient ships." An elderly delegate from the Thulon ice world raised a tentacle to speak. "Humans of Earth, your actions speak well of your species. But what of the Krex? Your fleet contained them, but they still exist. What happens when they break free?" Sarah smiled calmly. "Delegate Frostwalker, the Krex mega-organism remains contained, but it's no longer alone. We've established a research station around it, staffed by scientists from 12 different species. The Krex are learning from us just as we're learning from them." She gestured to another screen showing the research station. It was a beautiful structure, with sections designed for species with different environmental needs. At its center, the contained Krex organism pulsed with a different rhythm than before. Slower, more thoughtful. The Krex were nomads because they didn't know how to build. They consumed because they didn't know how to create. We're teaching them alternatives. Ambassador Zill spoke again, his voice filled with pride. "The humans have done more than save us from the Krex. They've shown us a new way of thinking about galactic civilization." An urgent beeping interrupted the ceremony. A communication technician hurried to Admiral Mitchell with a message tablet. After reading it, the Admiral looked up with a mixture of concern and anticipation. "I've just received word from our deep space monitoring stations," he announced. "We're detecting new energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Unknown ships, technology we've never seen before." A wave of nervous chatter swept through the assembly. For many species, the arrival of unknowns had historically meant invasion or worse. Sarah stepped forward again. "Delegates, we face the same choice we faced 3 months ago. Do we meet the unknown with fear or with friendship? Do we prepare for war or for welcome?" She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. "Earth formally requests permission to send an expedition to meet these new arrivals, not as conquerors, but as ambassadors. The galaxy is large enough for all of us." The Centauri delegate spoke first. "The Centauri colonies support Earth's proposal, as do the Valari," added Governor Lyra, whose world had been saved by human intervention. One by one, species that had never agreed on anything before began to vote in favor of a human-led diplomatic mission. The vote wasn't even close. 46 species in favor, 1 abstention. Admiral Mitchell smiled. We'll have a mixed crew, representatives from every willing species, traveling together as equals. As the session concluded, something unprecedented happened. Species that had been suspicious neighbors for millennia began forming small groups, discussing collaboration projects. The war against the Kreks had done more than save lives. It had shown the galaxy what was possible when different species worked together. Sarah found herself surrounded by alien diplomats, all eager to establish formal relations with Earth. But what struck her most was the change in how they looked at humans. The fear was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. Ambassador. Zil approached her as the crowds began to disperse. Captain Chen, I have something to confess. What's that, Ambassador? When I first arrived at your space station, I expected to find monsters. I was prepared to pay any price to save my people, even if it meant unleashing something terrible. On the galaxy, Sarah smiled. And what did you find instead? I found exactly what the galaxy needed. Not monsters, but guardians. Not conquerors, but friends. He paused, his large eyes reflecting the lights of the chamber. The Galactic Council has a new motto now, inspired by humans. Would you like to hear it? Please. Different worlds, shared skies. As Sarah left the council chambers, she looked out through the massive transparent aluminum windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, new species waited to be discovered, new friends to be made, new challenges to face together. Earth had answered one call for help and changed the galaxy forever. They were ready to answer the next one. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And at the heart of it all, a simple principle that humans had always known. But the galaxy was just learning. The strongest civilizations weren't those that stood alone, but those that stood together. In space, no one had to fight alone anymore. The Deathworlders had made sure of that.